because I am always thinking about candy. It's terrible. It's terrible. Tell you a little bit about myself. 53-year-old mother of 8, been married for 28 years, I think. Grew up in a small family business, and that about sums it up. Yeah. And I'm Catholic. I was majoring in political science because I thought I loved the law, and I thought I would want to work for like the Republican National Committee and policy making and stuff like that down in Washington, D.C. And as time went on, I went to work at a hospital as I was in school, and then I realized I liked nursing. So then my mother said, you should major in nursing and volunteer for political campaigns. But then I got married and had children, and the whole thing dissolved. So I did neither nursing nor law. So the job I currently have, really kind of, how did it even begin? I think that, I know. I guess I was looking for a little bit of supplemental income, and my mother still owned our family business at the time, the one that I had grown up with. So she sent me a couple of the big kettles that temper the chocolate and said, if you want to make our molds, our nonpareils, do that stuff for us, I'll pay you to do it instead of the guy here. Well, once I started doing that, I started diving a little deeper and deciding I wanted to make truffles instead. And then I started thinking I would do it as a fundraiser for church. And so I would bring them to our church and I would sell them and donate the money to church. And it gradually, became the idea to go to the vendor fairs locally. And again, that just kind of graduated into the option to open an actual storefront, which, that had its peaks and valleys and, has brought me to where I am now, which is really just working for someone else making chocolate. But I still get to, in this situation that I'm in, I get to play as much as I want to. I am in full control of what I choose to make, but I have no responsibility. It's lovely. I have to say, there's a lot about my job, the way I currently do it, that I like. As I mentioned, the gal that I'm working with says, do whatever the heck you want and we'll sell it. We don't care what you do. So I get to experiment as much as I want to. I get to decide when I'm going and when I'm not, which allows me to still prioritize mass each day. So when you say the favorite part of it, so I'm speaking about the job that I'm actually currently in. In terms of what do I like about candy making? It's the whole creative process. When you find a formula for a fudge, a formula for a hard candy, a formula for a caramel, and then you figure out, well, if I toss this in, or if I blend this way, this is what happens. Or if I cook it to this temperature, this is what happens. Then you're like, wait a minute, what if I apply this too? And then you get a whole other set of things that, you know, that is fun to figure out what that foundational thing is and then branch out. That I like in terms, like I said, the chocolate making itself, candy making itself. So again, are we talking about the job I currently do? I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't care what I answer, but the hardest part for me is not thinking about it, because I am always thinking about candy. It's terrible. It's terrible. I'm at Mass thinking about candy, listening to my children tell me about their day, thinking about candy. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's a disease. Well, there was a time 6 years ago or so, admittedly, I had a puffed head because of people like your mom and various other people. When I was the only game in town and people were like, what, because I never did do this on my own until, I don't know when I started. Let's say it was 10 years ago when I started here in St. Mary's County. When I go back home to Maine and I work in that store and people come in who have been coming in for 70, 80-year-old women who talk about their grandmothers telling, oh, we used to get, my grandma used to get the peanut brittle down at the store that used to be on the beach. Oh, I remember your father. We would go into the store and he would always bring out little samples and stuff. Hearing the generational stories. So when I'm there, hearing the generational stories, hearing people talk about how that candy, my family's candy, has been part of their lives forever. And then when I'm here, not so much anymore, but when I was fully in charge of it and I made all the decisions about ingredients and stuff, people being like, this is great candy. And it felt good to have something that no one else around could do. That was a cool thing. Not thinking about it. Focusing on things, keeping it in its place, I guess, is because this is what courses through my veins, and realizing that this supports my family and my vocation. My family, my vocation do not support my chocolate making. So that, chocolate excites me, candy making excites me. My kids excite me, but sometimes they're a drag too, I don't know. But keeping it in its place and realizing that I definitely don't want to ever put my children aside because of the urgency that I feel to get that work done. Well, again, if I take the big picture of the candy business in Maine, which includes the being with customers and stuff, not strictly chocolate making, you have to like people. It's not something that you don't go, I don't just go into and again, I guess it is part of what I love. When I'm there, I can do anything from be with the customers out front to being in the kitchen to kind of just chilling out, packing something. You have, well, actually, you have to be willing to shift gears very quickly. I think to be successful, you have to be able to shift gears very quickly in the environment that I grew up in, and that if I had my way, it would be that way here, where it's just constant action, constant movement, constant change. You have to have, I think you have to have ideas that are always new to bring to people, because I think people get bored kind of quickly. And I think you have to be willing to experiment with things that even you personally don't like, because people have different tastes. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say. Like a lot of kids, my kids get tired of hearing about they, you know, they're not necessarily interested in candy. They get weary of it. I didn't like it growing up, meaning I didn't like hearing my parents talk about it. Going into the store was a pain, but then you realize how much you like it. So it affects my family life currently in a way that the kids say, hey, you're going into work again, or you have to do this, you're not going to be here, you can't do something. So I would say in some ways it's a bit negatively in the short term, but then in the long term, I think there's a lot of, you learn, they think they're going to learn to love it like I learned to love it. It's part of, like your mom used the word, the legacy. It's part of their family. It's something that I think they're going to be proud of in 10 or 20 years and go, oh, hey, this, you know, and, you know, many generations ago, sons did what their fathers did. You know, you pass down this family business, this family trade or whatever. And I guess there's a little bit of that. I'm hoping that my kids are going to pick up on. So short term, I'd say it's a little bit negative, but in the long term, I do believe it's going to be something that they like. Certainly presents a challenge. How does it affect my faith life? I think that it affects my faith life in that it has made it very by honestly looking at how much I'm distracted by candy. I mean, this is probably a little heavier than we need to, but like when I think about how distracted I am by candy, I realize how, you know, God, I need to be always working to put God first. And my nature is not to. My nature is to constantly think about candy. And so, yeah, I don't think it has a, it has a positive effect only insofar as it shows me how, it doesn't even make sense almost, but does that make any sense? It probably doesn't. I'm like I said, I realize, holy mackerel, you think you're paying attention to God, but holy mackerel, you're thinking about candy canes. Stop. To pursue a career in my field, if somebody were thinking to themselves, I want to be I guess I would say you can. So one of the things that I believe strongly is that a lot of the different chocolate schools, a lot of the different, the books and things, I guess I would say go to work in a chocolate place. I wouldn't necessarily say go to school, because like I wouldn't necessarily go to a chocolate, or at least one that is meant to be a culinary school, because I think that they're just a great marketing job. I think, I guess I think that you can, if you like chocolate and you get the fundamentals of how to temper chocolate, and if this is what you want to do and you like to cook and you like to play, you can do this by just diving in. I really don't think this is all that hard. Once you know, if you like cooking and you know how, and you want to make chocolate, you can do this. It's not hard. It's not hard. And let your own creative juices kind of get out there. That's what I would say. Let your own creative juices go, and don't even like necessarily even, I'm going to say, follow trends or something. Create your own, or I guess, you know, because a lot of this has been done. I guess that's what I would say. I wouldn't necessarily follow a school or something like that. I also think they hold back. I don't think they tell you everything. You learn by doing. You learn by, and that's kind of how I would say, just dive in and do it. And so it's not just chocolatier, because I also do sugarcraft, you know, the brittles and the toffees and the candy canes, that's sugarcraft. So it would be confectioner, I guess, is what they would classify it as when you do chocolate and sugarcraft. So I don't do a lot of sugarcraft, but I do it, and it's fun. Not as fun as chocolate.